Okay, last few things of the quarter. We have a project due in a couple of days. I've seen some really good work with it from the people who have come to ask me questions, so that is great to see. I assume that other people have other questions about it or would like to check their work. So we will have some time for that after we go over these last couple of design patterns. And then we have a final exam on Monday from 1 to 3 in this classroom. Did anyone have any questions about the study guide to help them prepare for Friday's review session? Yeah,
I didn't see the slides in Canvas. The
I should get those up. Yeah, if there are missing slides, they should be up. I'll do that real quick once we're done with these couple design patterns. Other questions? Other things that people need? Okay. The last design pattern that we had talked about was state, I believe. Did we talk about state or did we stop before it or after it? I think we talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah, so object alter its behavior when its internal state changes. Yeah, we talked about finite state machines. So the last couple we're gonna do are template and visitor. So template. So we're creating some kind of data mining application, analyzing corporate documents. We need some way to handle docs that are Word files, CSVs that are Excel files, and PDFs. CSVs don't necessarily have to be Excel files. A lot of data is just done in CSV, but the idea is that we could hard code this to only work with docs, and we need different algorithms here. Extract the data from a doc file, extract the data from a CSV file, extract the data from a PDF file, and then we have another separate algorithm for parsing the data that's coming from a doc, a CSV, or a PDF. So all three of these classes have a lot of similar code. Notice how the file is opened the same way, the analysis is done the same way, the reports are sent the same way, and the file is closed the same way. The only thing that varies is how we extract the data and how we parse the data. So we want to do something that allows us to template method the beginning of it. So we're going to break it down into a series of steps, turn these steps into methods, and then put those calls into a single template method. So the steps can be abstract. We make a base class for all three parsings of docs and CSVs and PDFs. So that's the data miner abstract class. And then we make concrete classes. The PDF data miner would be an example of one of those that extends it. So this has a default implementation of analyzing the data, but now we have abstracted almost all of this up to the superclass. The mine does the opening of the file, extracting the data, parsing the data, analyzing the data, sending the report, and closing the file. So that's the template method. Then these are the steps that the template method uses to be able to do that. So open file exists as a step, but the template method puts those together into a template. So we have abstract steps. Abstract steps need to be implemented by every subclass, and you do this where it differs between those subclasses, wherever something changes between a doc or a CSV or a PDF. Optional steps have a default implementation that can be overridden if the subclass changes that. So here's another analogy where we have some kind of base architectural plan, and we can make small changes to that architectural plan as needed if we need to. So there are optional steps inside of the template. So the template is, here are the walls, here are the doors, here are the windows, here's the roof, and then here's the base. And you basically do all of that together at the garage. And you can decide doors or garage at this step, and you decide at this step if the roof has some kind of, oh my gosh, what are those called? Skylights. Have a skylight in the roof. And you can now create multiple different types of houses by templating this process. It, again, seems kind of similar to a builder type of construction, but now it's, instead of being embedded in the process, it's actually embedded in the, how do I want to state this? It's like, it's put together into one class. So we have the abstract class that contains the template method. The template method is going to have all of the logic for how to call the different steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we find that the concrete classes can use different subsets of those steps. And we can also use the template method where necessary to save us all of the copying and pasting of the extra work for producing that particular template. Or we can add some logic to the template method that allows us to shortcut some of this. It saves a bunch of work. So that's the template method. Anyone have questions on the template method? All right, visitor. We want to be separating the actual logic of the work from the classes, the actual objects that they're working on. So we want that kind of separation. So the issue here is that we have the example they use is we're developing an app working with geographic information structured as a large graph. Each node of the graph is an entity like a city, but it may be some other kind of area. Nodes are connected if there's a road. And we find that we want to export the graph into some kind of textual format, like an XML format. So we just add an export method to each different node class, where each node class is either a city or a sightseeing place or something of the sort. Then we can use recursion to go over every node in the graph, and for each node, execute that node's export method. Unfortunately, we can't alter the existing node classes. The code's already in production, we don't want to go back and modify the existing node classes to be able to make that export method for each one of those nodes. So the visitor is going to have us abstracting that. So instead of the export being dependent on each one of those classes separately, we're going to create a visitor class. And the visitor class is going to have methods for how we're going to handle it for each different object type. So you can see that the export visitor now has a method of how do you handle a city node? How do you handle an industry node? How do you handle a sightseeing node? Of course, we don't know which one of these to call because we need to know whether it is a city or industry or sightseeing. And it would look like, in the worst case, you have to write a large for each with ifs for each. If the node is a city node, then call the do for city. If the node is an industry node, then call do for industry. And that creates a very large headache. So we use something called double dispatch, which we can go take a look at if people are interested. So this allows us to add the classes inside of the nodes. There's a client code, here's the city class, and we can add a method that accepts a visitor object. So the accept takes the visitor object, and then we can call do for city within the city class. So we just, since the visitor stores something that adheres to the interface of the type of these different classes, the city class and the industry class, we can just pass it an object of that type, and it can determine for itself which type of object it is. inside of the city class, we take in this visitor. We then do this for the city and we don't actually go access the code for the old city, the old city node class. So a real world analogy of the visitor is something like you're prepared as an insurance agent. Here's a residential, here's an industrial, and here's a commercial type of organization. The pitch that you give is different depending on which one you're in. So you want to be able to know your pitch and have that ready for each one of those. If it's a residential building, you sell medical insurance. If it's a bank, you sell theft insurance. If it's a coffee shop, you sell fire and flood insurance. So the visitor is capable of doing that while making minimal changes to existing code. Questions on the visitor pattern? As I mentioned, it's a very whirlwind tour, but hopefully you at least have a little bit of an idea of this is a design pattern that exists. Here's a basic idea, example of when we might use it. And these will not be covered on the final exam, but I think they're important to know for your own future design projects. Questions on any of the design patterns or design patterns in general? All right, we will shift focus and start working on our projects. I guess I will stop recording here because this is new information that needs to be watched. We're just going to be working on our projects for the rest of our class.